What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news, man, and I am fired up to be back with some Lions news. It's been a minute since we've had some Lions news, so let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, we have some Lions news. As you can see, the energy is real right now. I'm pretty pumped up just to talk about any kind of real Lions news. This is actually perfect timing because in our last live stream, we spoke about this player, the Lions wanting to bring him in for a visit. We went through some of his statistics, and now here we are. The Lions, reportedly this week, are going to sign this player to a 2-year deal. So if you were in that live stream, you know who I'm talking about, but if you weren't, you still may know who I'm talking about. We're talking about kicker Jake Bates from the Michigan Panthers. So it is official. Jake Bates will be signing a 2-year deal with the Lions. Now, we're going to get into the numbers here in 1 second, but the significance I will point out first, we don't know the details of the deal, how much guaranteed money is there. I would assume that there's some to keep him away from the two other teams that reportedly visited with him, the Washington Commanders and also the Green Bay Packers, which just feels great, by the way. Like, hey, they drafted a kicker recently. Now you can't have this guy. It just feels fantastic. So I'm assuming there's some guaranteed money there, which would make sense as we were talking about it live. Hey, throw him some guaranteed money. The way I was looking at it is it going to hurt you if it's just a 1-year deal? But reportedly it's a 2-year deal, so the Lions may have had to go a little bit above and beyond to say, okay, Jake Bates, he probably should stay here. But maybe not. Maybe he just wanted to kick in Ford Field again or kick under a dome for a majority of the games because he was pretty amazing when he was in that environment. You compare that to the other kickers that we have. Michael Badgley, he re-signed on the 1-year deal, a little bit of guaranteed money in there. Then also you have James Turner on the undrafted free agent contract, which is 3 years, but we know that there's all sorts of outs of that kind of contract. So with that, who is Jake Bates? Well, he became kind of like the guy, right? He did. I mean, this guy was legitimately in the MVP conversation early this season UFL. And reportedly, the Lions have had interest for months here inquiring about this kicker. Also had a visit with Jake Bates on Tuesday. They met with him, but it was not like an official workout. With that, though, Jake Bates has taken a strange path to get where he is today. And actually, some of it surprised me. And then we'll go through the numbers because the numbers are really strong, and we talked about them in the live stream, so I'll bring those over to this video. But let's start here. So Jake Bates, former soccer player in high school and his first 2 years in college with Central Arkansas. I can say this, anybody that I know that plays soccer, they can kick the heck out of a football. Okay, they're really good at it. It's natural. I'm not saying it's like that for everybody that plays soccer. Maybe someone in the comments be like, yo, I can't kick a football, but I can play soccer. You're probably lying, but hey, let me know. Everybody that I know that can play soccer can kick a football like crazy, or really any ball, all right? If it's kickball, the ball's gone. It hit the ceiling. Ah, dang. It's never a bad bet to just bet on a guy that's played soccer. But the weird thing about Jake Bates is that his entire college career, he wasn't getting opportunities to kick field goals. I mean, maybe in practice he was. I would assume that he was. But in games, he was not. Then he goes to Texas State to become a full-time kickoff specialist with Texas State. Then transfers to Arkansas in 2022 to become a full-time kickoff specialist at Arkansas. Now, both of those schools had good kickers, so he didn't become, the place kicker for either of those teams. Specifically, if you look at a team like Arkansas, they had Cam Little for the past 3 seasons, which was a draft pick this year and was good really every single season, so I can understand that. It's actually kind of the perfect storm, though, because he kind of goes under the radar just to break out in the UFL. He was extremely successful. Now, the kickoff rules are much different now. It's going to take a different skill set, and we'll see if Jake Bates maybe can add some of that to the table, because you're not necessarily just trying to kick it as far as you can for a touchback. Now you have to hit it in a certain zone. There's different rules now to the kickoffs, but they were also different in UFL because you had to kick it much further to achieve a touchback. That being said, though, I still think that these stats, maybe not exactly relevant, I still think that they're pretty interesting, is that with Arkansas, 64 of his 75 kickoffs resulted in touchbacks, which led the FBS in terms of the highest percentage. Also 4th in net yards on kickoffs and 3rd in total touchbacks as a kickoff specialist. Plus, he had an onside kick attempt against Alabama that was successful. Actually lands with the Houston Texans as an undrafted free agent in 2023. Reportedly, he was brought in just to give rest to their other kicker because he was only there for 13 days. And in a preseason game, 2 for 3 on extra points, a couple of kickoffs that went for touchbacks, and that was it. He was let go 13 days later, and then he went to the UFL with the Michigan Panthers, and my goodness, was he electric. To begin this season, MVP ladder, basically. Who is in that MVP conversation for this league? And until about week 7, week 8, Jake Bates was consistently in the MVP conversation. We're going to look at the numbers to begin this season. Jake Bates was incredible to start the year. Now, we're going to kind of split this up a little bit, and I'm going to talk about when he was indoor versus outdoor. I think that's something that's worth mentioning. I also broke this into yards kicked from. Like, start here. Let's just start with how the guy began the season. This is why he was in the MVP conversation. So you start off first game, and of course at home, that means they're in Ford Field. So now he's coming back to Ford Field to play in this dome, which he had a ton of success. And his first field goal was good from 64 yards. It's a great start. Everybody kind of saw this kick. It was like, whoa, hey, hold up. Who's Jake Bates? Maybe we should look at this guy. Then you move on to week 2. He made 2 field goals from 62 yards and 52 yards. Again, once again, at home. Now, one of those kicks, a 62-yard kick, was going into halftime. A lot of his long kicks were going into halftime. Move on to week 3 against Houston. Again, a home game, was good from 46 and 55. 55-yard kick was going in halftime. So what you're seeing is none of these kicks are like easy. Okay, these are long kicks that he's consistently making to begin the season at home in Ford Field. So that's how he starts. All of a sudden, he's in the MVP conversation, and he can't really blame anybody for having him there because it was an incredible start. All of a sudden, we go on the road, though this is still indoors against the Brahmas, where he made a 49-yard field goal, so he's still perfect up to this point. Staying on the road against the Memphis Showboats. This will be the first time that we see him outdoors, and he had a couple of misses. He missed from 58, missed from 62. I mean, that's kind of normal to miss from that far. He also made a kick from 30 yards. Continuing, back at home now, and this time against Arlington, he was good from 43, 60, 29, 49, and 42. A perfect day, made tons of field goals. So even at this point, he's still in a really good spot. You're still in that MVP conversation. Another good week, followed that up against the DC Defenders. This was outside, made it from 51, made it from 22, made it from 40. A little bit easier field goals here, but still a 50-plus yard field goal outdoors. Again, I'm not saying any of the conditions were necessarily bad in these situations, but he was technically outdoors. Go back home against the Showboats. He misses from 51.
He has that kind of soccer form with the build-up speed into his kick, and the snap is very important. Some of these misses that you see, it doesn't seem like the ball always gets down fast enough. I mean, the block kick, he slips on the block kick, but then there's also the aspect you also see him missing right when he is missing these field goals.
The next week on the road against the Roughnecks, misses from 39. The next week on the road against the Stallions, makes it from 39 and 44, but misses from 53 yards, and that 53-yard kick was at the end of the game. That would have been to win the game. They lost by 1 in that game. Then back on the road against the Stallions, this would have been the playoff game to end the season. He went 4 of 6 in this game, making from 53, 42, 39, 25, a great start. And then we saw in the second half, one of the kicks was blocked, missed from 51, missed from 44. So a little bit of a rocky finish. Again, some of these are blocks. Also, one thing to keep in mind too is that sometimes it's also about the holder. Usually in college, statistically, kickers are much worse. And the reasoning I've been given to that by Jason Hansen was that it usually comes down to the holder in college. The process is not as clean as it is in the NFL. It's not as consistent. It's not as tight as it is in the NFL. So that's where you can get some of the inconsistent results. That's always important to kind of keep in mind, especially on a block. Sometimes, hey, that could be on the kicker, but other times it may not be something that the kicker can really control, especially if it's one of the longer kicks. Now, breaking it down then into distance of the kick, here's how I did it. Stick with me here. So if you go between 0 yards to 30 yards, so these are your short kicks, your short field goals, he was 4 of 4, again, according to my calculations here, with the Michigan Panthers. Between 31 and 41 yards, he was 4 of 5. So in this category, 8 of 9, really between 0 and 41 yards, which is where you want it at, right? You want this really near perfect when you're talking about some of these shorter field goals to knock these through, really anything right inside the 23-yard line when you line up for a field goal. So you really want these things to be knocked in. Now you start to get a little bit further here. Between 42 and 52 yards, he was 8 of 11. Pretty strong. And again, one of those were blocked, and that would have been the last game of the season where he had the 51-yard block kicked. So 8 for 11 in that spot. And then finally, the big one, 53-plus yards. He was 5 for 8 on the season. So again, even that above half, that's pretty darn good, 53 yards. I mean, the big thing there to me, and I brought this up during the live stream, is do you have the confidence to put him out there in those spots? Because as we've seen in the past, just because you've shown that you can make it in practice or you made it like one time, does the team still have confidence to actually put you out there to kick that field goal? And that will be the difference here. Jake Bates, according to his kickoffs, obviously we see by the field goal makes, the guy has an absolute monster leg, so it makes you believe that they would at least have confidence to put him out there in those spots, which means that as a whole, he was 17 of 22 during the regular season, but as a whole, he was 21 of 28 during the entire season, including the playoffs, which would put you at 75%. So overall, this guy was off to an amazing start. I think the big thing here is how successful he was from distance. Obviously, the kickoff specialist background could absolutely help him, especially with the new rules if he proves to be successful there. This makes a ton of sense for the Lions to be interested in this player. If I was the Lions looking through the numbers, I would say, yeah, I'd probably be interested in at least bringing this guy in as well. And if the Lions had to throw an extra year, if they had to give a little extra guaranteed money to make sure they brought him in, you might as well do it. You have the money to do it. And kicker's super valuable. You know, it's been a revolving door for the Lions. So just adding more competition to James Turner, who's seemingly done really well this offseason, and still Michael Badgley, who we kind of know exactly what we're going to get when he's out there in terms of consistency, extra points, making some of the shorter field goals. It's going to be a tough competition, but overall, Jake Bates is a Lion, and to me, it makes a ton of sense. I'm just glad they were able to get this done. And staying in Ford Field, where he's already comfortable, in a dome where we've seen him be extremely successful, and he's knocking all these big kicks in big moments as well, specifically a game winner in his first week of the season, which was, again, the one that kind of put him in the spotlight. Jake Bates is a Lion. I'm very happy about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.